there are a lot of parameters in the tender process. And so on some view, people do think the potential for innovation is limited. But it kind of depends, I suppose, what you're doing and what you're tendering for. What I think always you should have in your tender conditions is a statement that says that alternative offers can be considered. And that then presents a blank page to tenderers to be innovative if they can. But what also needs, I think, to be thought about is innovations around aggregation, pooling, the form of contract that might be undertaken, for example, or the procurement method. And there are some evolving methods of procurement which are happening, particularly in Queensland and New South Wales. I'm not sure that they've arrived in Victoria yet. There's what's called early contractor involvement or early tenderer involvement in the procurement process. And this is a different way of approaching the market, and it allows for the government agency and the tenderers and the end contractor to interact much earlier and to go through perceived risks in a particular project or contract and to allocate those risks, and so that what is ultimately tendered or negotiated is what they call a risk-adjusted price or an RAP. There's been enormous success with that up in Queensland and also developing success with it in New South Wales. I've been involved myself in a couple in New South Wales. There's been some savings by adopting that methodology because it brings together all the parties to workshop the contract, to identify the risks, as I've said, and to negotiate them, which is really important. And other parts of it also include the fact that you can bring on a contractor for a limited scope, so the first stage of a scope, like, for example, the design activities or any preliminary activity, whilst negotiating the full contract, acknowledging, and those works will be paid for, on a do-and-charge basis or on a fixed price, acknowledging that at the end of stage one, if the contract can't be negotiated or if the principal government agency thinks that it's not a value-for-money price in terms of the rest of the work, so the construction of what's designed, then the contractor can be terminated for convenience, the design work that's been done assigned to the government, for the government to then go to public tender with that design. So it presents more options. And I think that's some innovation that's being explored. Other sort of innovations as well are when you have things, for example, a high-level, high-risk maintenance need or security services, or just things that are needed to be done and needed constantly done, particularly security around state significant infrastructure, for example. It's sometimes worth considering to yourself, well, geez, I might want 2 or 3 providers here, because if I have one and that one, for whatever reason, can no longer continue, insolvency or whatever, particularly in the current environment or the environment that we've had over the last 12 months, then you need to be able to quickly bring somebody else on. So if you've got 2 or 3 service providers, then that can mitigate that risk, and it can be very good. And it also keeps the other parties pretty honest as well. If one party's not performing well, and if you have a termination for convenience right, you know that you've got 1 or 2 other providers waiting in the wings to pick up that additional work. The other thing that's worth thinking about in that sort of regard is where you have things that are easily segregated, so you can bring them together, but you can also segregate them. You can ask the market for discounts. So you can say, well, if you sort of are successful for package 1, what's your price? If you're successful for more than 1 package, so 2 packages, presumably that's valuable to you, so you'll give us a discount. If you're successful in 3 packages, presumably a bigger discount, and 4. So you can ask them for pricing for all the packages, but then discounts if they win multiple packages. And these are the sorts of, it sounds pretty simple, but it's the sort of thing that agencies don't think about. They just go out for a price for 8 or 9 packages without thinking, geez, we can drive some value here.